It's probably, yeah, just going to go from there.
Um, I at some point, I don't know how I'm going to shoehorn it in, but we're talking about the fucking Pelicans.
We can talk about the Pelicans all you want.
Oh my god, and the fact that the how Troy Weaver still has influence on NBA decision making is just absolutely fucking beyond me.
I really don't get it.
Okay, we're live, so I'll go ahead and get us going here. And then at some point, I got to talk to Tone about how to actually make all her stuff look all pretty and nice like theirs. Like, Jesus, I was intimidated. All right.
Hey, man, it's a whole new thing. Hello and welcome to the No Gimmies podcast. This is our first off-season podcast, and we have a little something called NBA free agency. It starts on Monday night at 6 p.m. Here we are. It's
Wink, wink. It starts tomorrow night. Wink.
yeah, wink, wink. Although there's
Yeah.
a lot of things being announced.
My favorite thing, just real quick, and I know, like, I love how we do this. NBA free agency starts at 6 p.m. and somehow there's like 15 deals that roll out at 6:01 p.m. And
That's
so
just
we're,
how hard they work, Aaron.
yeah,
That's
no,
how
like
hard the agents and the teams work.
stuff happens fast in the
It
league,
really
so
does.
fast that they can get the stipulations and everything talked out on a player going to a brand new team on a contract that's
Damn
60
right.
pages long within that short period of
You
time. It's
just
just
don't you just don't want it bad enough, which is why that's why you don't have hustle culture, bro. That's
yeah,
your
I'm a
that's what
rest
your
on my
issue is.
laurels guy. I'm the type of person that ends up with Ben Simmons at the back end of free agency, and then I'm just showing sizzle videos all season to make sure everybody knows he's back in the lab.
Well, as you can clearly see, Aaron and I are enjoying the NBA offseason. We're enjoying our first podcast where there's no actual basketball being played. This is all transactional NBA stuff. And it is 7:40 on a Sunday night. So we have less than 24 hours to go. That's Eastern time because my buddy Aaron over there, it's mid-afternoon in Vegas. And I am your host, Evan Cook. I'm joined as always by Aaron Bullwinkle. Aaron, I guess we got to start somewhere, so we might as well start with the GOAT, LeBron James.
I mean, LeBron doing what LeBron does, which is making sure he gets top billing in any conversations in the offseason. You were the one that informed me about the letter that Rich Paul sent, which I'm going to let you kind of
Yep.
synopsize in a moment. But for those out there, anybody that's responding to any of this stuff, like, please remember that every single summer we do some variation of this with LeBron, even in the summers where we don't have the question as to whether or not he's opting in or opting out, which has been so rare because of these 1+1s and 2+1s that he's kind of signed in perpetuity for the last 12 years. But like, this is probably much ado about nothing, but we do have to have the conversation.
So, just to put everything into context, LeBron and the Lakers are like the woman who wears white to somebody else's wedding. They have to make sure that the attention is on them somehow, even though none of this is about them. If the spotlight is not on LeBron and the Lakers for too long, they get a little antsy in their pantsy. They get a little upset. So they find a way to dominate the storylines. So we found out today that LeBron James, who every year loves to complain about how the team hasn't provided him with enough help to, eventually win a championship the way that he wants, though he's never taken a pay cut in order to make that happen. LeBron opts into his $52.6 million deal. Now, that is significant because, like Aaron said, most of the time LeBron opts out of the final year of his deal and signs a 1+1 or a 2+1, gives him a little flexibility, keeps his money coming in, but gives the team a little, gives himself and the team a little bit of flexibility instead of signing these long supermax contracts like we're used to seeing. But then his agent and good friend Rich Paul, they released a letter putting a little bit of pressure on the new Lakers front office and Lakers ownership. So this is the quote. This is from Rich Paul. This is what he said. This is just two paragraphs. He said, LeBron wants to compete for a championship. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. So immediately, my first thought is he's saying that even though the Lakers were the number 3 seed in the playoffs this year, they didn't have a realistic chance of winning it all despite trading for Luka Doncic. I know. We'll get there. I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. We are very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this point in his life and career. This language is very pointed. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that, are supportive, and want what's best for him. Aaron, what's your initial reaction to that letter from Paul? Even saying that like this is much ado about nothing most of the time. It's a little bit of lip service. They're doing what they're supposed to do. My immediate reaction, I have thoughts. I just want to know yours.
My initial reaction is this feels like a letter that we've been read from LeBron's camp like 3 or 4 times. Now, whether or not that's just me creating the concept of this exact kind of language before, but like this almost feels boilerplate for what LeBron does in the offseason, which is like this passive pressure to make sure the organization knows that he wants to get his way. Now, plenty of the times it's in the roster moves that are built around him that they've been so, falsely acting like they have no part in when we all know that that's complete BS. And a few times I feel like it's also been about how he can express like, hey, I'm either going to leave a la Cleveland or you guys are going to do the things that I want you to do. This has happened with him so many times, but what's different here, and I think it's reflected in the fact that he opted in, is he doesn't have the stroke in this situation the way that he used to. LeBron is incredibly valuable as a entity in terms of driving numbers in the seats, but if you're the Lakers, that's not a problem for yourself. And as a player on the floor, as great as he is and as impressive as he was last year, nobody was going to pay him $53 million to perform for them next year, particularly because nobody really had the money. So LeBron can sit here and do this in grandstand, and they can do all of these things. But honestly, the Lakers can go, we don't care. You opted in, come play, don't play, do whatever you want to do. Now, for their sake, I'm sure they're going to explore whatever they can and what the trade options are, but they're very limited.
Okay. I mean, that's a completely reasonable thing to say. I do want to put a couple other things into context, though. LeBron's been with the Lakers since 2018, so we're coming up on year 7. This is the second longest stint of his career in one place. That was the first run in Cleveland. He was there from 2003 until 2011, and then he was with Cleveland. I'm sorry, with Miami for 4 years, and then back to Cleveland for 4 years, and now he's been with the Lakers for 7. So, I mean, this is his Lakers identity is almost as big a part of his identity as the Cleveland part, the Miami part, because he's been there for so long. Then obviously they've won a championship, but they've also had some really bad results as far as the season goes. I mean, they got bounced in the first round this past year. They've missed the playoffs a couple of times. Other than the bubble championship, it's been a stint with the Los Angeles Lakers that's been marred by a lot of mediocrity. And so I know that LeBron, he has bigger aspirations than just basketball. He's obviously looking beyond that. He's a billionaire. He wants to be an owner someday. There's expansion coming. I'm sure he's going to be a part of that in some form or fashion. But he does have something to prove as far as legacy goes because of the number of championships that he has. He has the same number as Steph. He has one less than Kobe. He has two less than Jordan. And he's got three less than Robert Horry. So obviously, I mean, if we're talking about people who won a lot of championships, Robert Horry is the GOAT. He's 6 behind Oscar
Well,
Robertson. I'm sorry, behind Bill Russell.
Bill Russell's the GOAT.
Bill
Like
Russell's the GOAT.
let's get it straight. The man doesn't have enough fingers for his
No,
rings.
it's just my
Like,
joke about how rings
yeah.
culture is stupid. But
Uh
because
yes.
everyone judges it based on championships. But LeBron's basing his legacy is on championships as well. Now, I think he has no reason to leave LA. He's got acting, his kids and his family live there. He lives there full time. He has no reason to actually leave. But let's play this out. There's only two places if he were to leave that would make sense if he's actively trying to win a championship. That is Cleveland and that is the New York Knicks. Those are the only two places that make any lick of sense for LeBron to go. But then again, like you said, we're talking $53 million. A lot of teams are cash strapped. They don't have the flexibility to absorb a contract like LeBron's. And the reason that he wants to, put this letter out there and make all this about winning a championship is because I feel like he realizes the end is getting near. I know that like he doesn't know if he wants to play one more year or multiple more years. But Father Time, he's defied it for as long as anybody has ever done it. But it's going to catch up to him eventually.
So first of all, the whole thing is about him still trying to chase legacy. But the one thing that I do want to make sure, like, this letter is just kind of an evolution of the talk that's come out of his camp year after year. And I think in general, it's all kind of based upon legacy. And I do agree that the timeline is reaching whatever, getting closer and closer to its eventual end. But be, this is like the fourth season. It's like LeBron wants to make sure the organization knows that he's doing this, and then he doesn't do anything to provide the organization the flexibility to do so. And that's really the crucial point here. And that's the thing where I think there's actually fair and justifiable criticism of LeBron. I'm all for any player getting their money. Get your money. I think the owners are
He's
greedy.
a
I think the situation.
billionaire. He's
Yeah,
got this money.
hold on. But I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, if business is what drives this first, I'm all for it. But to your point and to the point I was about to make,
I'm
look,
sorry.
we just watched Jalen Brunson do exactly the thing that LeBron could have done, right? Like LeBron could have opted out. He could have signed for less. He could have given the Lakers a lot more flexibility to add the pieces that can make this roster an actual championship roster. And that's why at the end of this, that letter means absolutely nothing to me because the words mean far less than actions. And your
Yeah.
actions tell me that your commitment is what LeBron has always done. And this is a fair criticism of a player I absolutely love. But LeBron likes to completely shirk accountability for the circumstances that he puts an organization in from his demands from a salary standpoint and an expectation standpoint. That's okay. Heavy is the head that wears a crown. When you're that awesome, you get to kind of force that leverage. But let's just be real about it and let's just call it what it is.
No, I completely agree. Well, let's stay with the Lakers and let's talk about what they can do around him. So Dorian Finney-Smith declined his player option of 15.4 million today, and he is set to become an unrestricted free agent. So he's got a lot of leverage because he does a lot of stuff that the Lakers need from him. He's a great 3-and-D guy. He's going to have a lot of interest from other teams. I've heard Houston is a front runner for Dorian Finney-Smith, which would be a great replacement for Dylan Brooks, whose defense will be sorely missed. And he's also a veteran player. Some of, he provides some of this veteran savvy that the Rockets, who are very young, obviously, would need. So, what are your thoughts on Dorian Finney-Smith? He's in a great position, I feel like.
I get the Rockets thing, and I understand in general the concept of bringing Dorian Finney-Smith to the Rockets. My frustration with it is the guy that becomes the casualty of that trade is Jabari Smith Jr., who I just want to see given the appropriate opportunity in Houston. And I know, look, I'm obviously still on Jabari Smith Jr. Island. I don't know how many people are still out here. I'm going to go down with the ship where that's concerned. But literally too, just because in terms of he's still an asset that's a tradable asset. Now, maybe Houston decides that if they get Dorian Finney-Smith, they move Jabari Smith Jr. and we see that. That wouldn't be surprising because he's at an extension point and they have to make a decision on him. Oh wait, excuse me. Is this? No, yeah, that's correct. I apologize.
Mhm.
But I don't. To me, the Rockets have kind of the veteran poise and savvy that they need, and Dorian Finney-Smith Jr. just has some redundancy with the guys that they have on the roster for what he's going to cost as a resource standpoint. But I'm also not going to look. The last person any of us really get to fault right now is Raphael Stone. Ryan Russillo made the point. The dude's on a heater. Like what he's done over the last 3 years ranks up there with the best GMs in the NBA right
Yep.
now. And so, like, if
I think I went online and I said that. I was like, I love every move that Houston has made this offseason. And if they were to get DFS, I would have loved that move for him as well. Everything they're doing makes a ton of sense.
let's talk about how smart a piece of business the Fred Van Vliet signing as the original construct was, right? Where everybody got the sticker shock when we saw the number at
3 for
120
100.
million for 3 years. But what he did was so intelligent in terms of making that player that be a team option on the third year when you knew this team was probably not going to be good enough until that point. And then they went, hey, we'll give you 60 cents on the dollar to come back. And so now instead of paying him 40 million for this coming season, they're going to pay him 25 million for the next two. Like just smart move after smart move by this guy who really understood, you know, we keep saying timeline. I hate using it, but it is appropriate
Yeah, but it's
in the
great
right sense.
value for Fred, man. It really
Yes,
is.
but just the machinations of understanding where the timeline of this team was and how it's very much the Isaiah Hartenstein deal too, where it's like these guys that are playing four-dimensional chess are the ones who really understand how they're leveraging the contracts of their veterans in the right way. And the DFS deal to me, if he makes it, then I trust Raphael Stone. But for me, I don't think you need to have that type of resource investment for a player that is additive, but also takes away from some of the development of the guys that you have there. So I just need to see what they're doing. But again, I wholly trust Houston's entire um, structural apparatus in terms of their decision making, player development, and in player choices.
DFS is a little bit older. He is 32, but I wonder if he could get something like like the deal that Caruso got when he got extended by the Thunder earlier this
Yeah.
year. Caruso got a 4-year, 80 million. What if DFS gets offered like a 3-year, 60 million by Houston, and the third year is a, team option? I mean, that's still good business though, right?
It is 20 million feels a touch high, but we're just talking
I
about
think that's just
gradations,
what the
right?
price is for guys like this.
But I don't think so. I don't like if I'm Houston, DFS is not as impactful a player as Alex Caruso. So I think
Right.
what I would
Yeah, I'm just
what
saying I wonder if that's
no, but
if
I'm
maybe he set the market.
yeah, I'm just arguing kind of through it. So
Oh, sure.
yes, and I would fully expect it would be something similar to what we see, a 2+1 or a 3+1.
Yeah.
Maybe they give him an additional year to ask him to take a little less money because this is his last big contract, right? Like the player is on a little bit of physical decline and he's at that age. I don't think DFS is going to be the same type of player at 36. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say or
No,
unfair
of
to the
course not.
player. So the Rockets do get to come in from that standpoint. So, but you're right. Like 4 at 70, 4 at 80 is probably the range it's going to go for. I want Jabari Smith Jr. to get all the minutes that the guy can get because I still really think that dude has something in him to be an impact player at this level.
Hey,
My bias, I'll take it. I'll own it. I'm fine with it. Like I'm not going to give up on him. All the people that listen to us
you're
know
the
I've
one.
got my
I
guys.
think you have my stock on him. I'm pretty sure we covered
Yeah,
that
I
in
think
one of
you
the
would.
episodes. I gave it
You
to
told me
you.
I was buying penny stock.
Penny stocks. That's right. Let's do one more Lakers bit of news and just we'll move on from there. And I'll just ask you real quick. Brooke Lopez and Clint Capella are two bigs that have been rumored that the Lakers are interested in. Do you have a preference on those two? And I think they could get. I think they could get like Capella for the MLE for the mid-level exception, and then Lopez they would have to sign to some sort of actual contract. They can't just absorb him into one of those mid-level spots. What's your thoughts on those two as options for the Lakers?
Of the two, I think it's got to be Capella because he's the more athletic of the two. He's the guy that's still
The
got
great
more
rim
left in the
runner.
tank. Yeah, and if you're looking at the best pairings with Luka, it's a guy that's going to set a screen and then dive to the rim. Brooke Lopez is a stretch big. Brooke Lopez also has gotten to the point now where he's just such a liability in space that you're
Yeah.
going to overextend what Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent have to do as point of attack defenders with him in that situation. Not that Capella's getting out there and like getting in front of guys, but he does just offer a little bit mobility on both ends in a
Mhm.
way that I think is better for this Lakers organization.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think, as good as Brooke Lopez has been defensively, and he's been very good. He's been a great, but he is getting up there in age. And he's also been playing alongside some guy named Giannis
Yes.
Antetokounmpo,
Yeah.
and I don't think the Lakers have a guy like that. So it might be a little hard for Brooke Lopez to be as impactful of a defender, especially like you said, if they're putting him in action all the time and he's playing that drop coverage with the way that the NBA is played now, he's just going to get torched and people are just going to be firing threes over the top of his head.
And think about this. If you're the other team and you have Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Brooke Lopez out on the floor, you are feasting on pick and roll with whoever those guys are guarding. You're
Right.
running everything to get those guys in actions, and the amount of open shots you're going to get on guys going under, guys just kind of bailing out on the play, like that is, it's just not a functional way to build a defense for a team that kind of found a good defense in the second half of the year, but also sort of got exposed once teams figured out what to do against them.
What are you talking about? Luca's skinny now.
Yeah, yeah.
Luca's got vengeance on his mind. Luca has been training with the same organization that trained Batman.
Can I
That's
tell you
what
what?
Luca's been doing.
one of my favorite things about this is I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago. Whenever it was one of the FIBA years, I always mix these up. But Luca came out and had he looked very svelte and skinny, blah blah blah, in July, and everybody was showing this. And then he went and played international basketball in Serbia and came back and looked like he had gained 30 pounds. So it was like he in the window between like the end of July and like the beginning of September, mid-September, he had put on a dish. He came back heavier than he had left, but we had seen all these things. So as cute as it is, and like, hey, I respect any guy putting in the work on their body. One, I do think it's kind of the mandate of the job, but it still is. It's the differentiating factor of greatness to like the absolute upper echelons. And if Luca can do it, it changes everything. But
Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
buy shit until I see him on the floor looking like he's 215 pounds, maybe
I mean,
230.
it's literally his job to be in shape and play basketball. Like,
Yes,
and
but
everyone's like, wow, look at the commitment from Luca. And I'm like, he's working out the
yeah,
way that basketball players do. I'm proud of you, I guess. But I don't understand like why we give this guy so much credit for being in shape whenever he like just refused to do so to the point that he got traded because the team that had him was so afraid that all the injuries that he's racked up were going to cost him the rest of his career. So when you
yeah.
show 30 pounds overweight all the time, you don't get a pat on the back, and you sure as shit don't get a cookie because we can't give you cookies because you're losing weight.
I mean, the organization was afraid of him being in shape, or they were part of the most ridiculous scheme to get the Lakers, who ended up being evaluated at $10 billion on a sale, the player that helped inflate the value of the franchise. But, anyways,
Let's
nothing conspicuous about all of that. Like
yeah, let's
just the craziest confluence of certain. I know O'Shea
I'm not
Jackson, like
touching it. I'm
my
not
boy.
touching it.
I don't know if you saw O'Shea Jackson on Rich Eisen, where he was even going down to the all three of the players who tore their Achilles wore zero and pink shoes. Like that was like I'm not to that point, but I want there to be a 30 for 30 like 20 years from now that explains to me every step about how this happened, because the fact that Adam Silver played the role that he did in all this and then the Lakers sell for $10 billion is just like ah, I don't buy in the full conspiracy thing, but it is wild. It's crazy.
I'm not touching that. And so I'm moving over to the other LA team where the big news today was that James Harden declined the last year of his contract and signed a new 2 year, $81.5 million contract to stay with the Los Angeles Clippers. Your reaction to that?
If mediocrity treadmill was a contract, that was it.
Hey, he
I, he
what I
was
mean, was
very
he
good
third? Was
last
he
season.
third team All NBA or was he
He
third
would
team
look.
NBA?
He was very good last. But here's the thing: James Harden is a great regular season performer. Awesome. You know what does not matter about the Clippers anymore is what the hell they do during the regular season. And they had to sign this contract. So I say that tongue in cheek. They had we said this 2 years ago that they were putting themselves in a position where they were locking into James Harden basically. Like they had to do this, and now they have to see it all the way through. But we know what James Harden is. Like, I don't care about what he does during the regular season anymore. And this is just somebody who wrote a piece about how well he played during the regular season, in the regular season. But at the end of this, like, what did he do in game 7? You know, what did he look like at
No
the end
show,
of a
like he always
series that
does.
mattered? Always. And so, what do we expect out of it? Like this year, guess what? He's going to shoot 40%. He's probably going to be in the top 5 in assists. His points per game will probably be a little bit down because Kawhi will be healthy. And then come playoff time, he'll be great in game 2 and he'll suck by game 6. Like rinse and repeat. That's what
Yep.
they signed
Yep.
up for.
No, I think I posted that on Threads. I was like, James Harden is who we think he is.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we need to sit here and belabor the point. He's still a good, impactful player during the regular season. He'll have up and down roller coaster games in the playoffs. And then he ultimately flames out. That's what he's done in every one of his in every one of the seasons that he's played. And the only season he didn't was the one where Chris Paul, got injured and then they missed 27 threes in a row. That was his one shot and it didn't work out. And I think now he's on the sunset of his career. And as good as the Clippers are, they couldn't even get out of the first round.
Can we talk about how kind of from like a career narrative standpoint and just the general fortunes and concept of both franchise and player, how perfect of a fit James Harden is to retire as a Clipper. Like,
Yeah.
this is how this should go. The Clippers, who have the third longest streak in NBA history of being above 500, but who still have not made it past the conference finals in the entire history of the organization,
Yep.
despite having several great runs with teams and just always seem to let down come playoff time. Like, player and fit, perfect. Like, and
Yeah.
player
You
organization,
know,
it's like
they are great
hand
together.
in glove. Like,
Hand in glove, and it does, the glove does fit,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
Um, but since we're talking about the conference finals, let's talk about the Western Conference team that was in the Western Conference finals this past year, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have two players they just re-signed. Julius Randle, 3 years, 100 million. Naz Reid, 5 years, 125 million. First thing I want to say about Naz Reid, every time I find out how old he is, I am surprised and shocked. I forget, and then the number it comes back around, and I'm like, he's how old again? It's unbelievable that like this guy is, he looks 35, 40 years old.
Yeah, but I mean, he was only in college for what, 2 seasons, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah, it just
Um,
feels like he's always been there. But
yeah,
they lock up a guy that is beloved by the fans and the franchise. 5 years, 125 million. That's great value for a guy like Naz Reid, even with his interesting, let's put it that way, put it mildly, his interesting performance in this year's playoffs. He was a bit of a no-show against the Thunder, but he'd had some big games for them, and they tie
and
him to the franchise long term.
in fairness, that was just a player who caught like an all-time cold streak. Now, I just got through burying James Harden for similar kind of letdowns, but
Yeah, but James Harden's done it for 10
no,
years.
that
Yeah.
you made my point for me. I was going to say Naz Reid doesn't have this body of work. It was just a guy. I mean, he missed 17 straight threes. Like, at some point, you're just like, okay, this guy is like on one of those like head banging
Yeah.
colders instead of a heater. The thing that's cool about this is there are not a lot of players who aren't superstars who I think are more representative and more beloved by an organization than Naz Reid. And so I think as a general fan base, all of us who watch the sport, who just kind of care about the sport and the narratives of the sport, are happy to see this. Like, I didn't want to go see Naz Reid in somebody else's uniform. He's been awesome for the Timberwolves. He's really a developmental success on their part, and he's been a fun player to watch and how he fits and works with Anthony Edwards and how they play, and the versatility that he offers is more important than I think people realize, because he is a guy that can guard 3, 4s, and 5s. He can kind of scale into positions. They had some fun looks where he was playing the small forward 2 years ago. They didn't do that as much as last season, just because it's a little bit tougher to fit with Julius Randle. But I like it. I'm happy with this. It's a good deal. It's good value. He's a former six man of the year. He's a player that last year performed just as well as he did the prior year when he won six
Yeah,
man of
I
the
don't know
year.
why he was overlooked in the sixth man of the year. I think you and I had talked about this. It's like they decided who the player was going to be, like who the sixth man of the year was going to be in like November.
Peyton Pritchard won it in October. In all fairness, Malik Beasley probably bet on himself in November and didn't end up working out for
Oh
him.
God. Oh God.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna have to get to that at some point. I'm staying in the Western Conference for now, but we
that's
can move
fine.
over to the East, and when we do, we're gonna have to talk about Malik Beasley. I did want to look at something real quick and just point this out to you. This is for next season, okay? 35 million for Rudy Gobert, 45 million for Anthony Edwards, 33 million for Julius Randle, 25 million for Jaden McDaniels, and 25 million for Naz Reid.
Well,
Just
what
wanted
these
to point that
moves
out. That's a
well
lot of
what
money.
well, and not just that, all of those guys are now on extensions that take them through at least the next 3 seasons. So
Yeah, that
this
was just next year.
no, but I'm just saying, right? So McDaniels is going to be on year 2 of his extension.
Yes.
Gobert just got extended. Reed just got extended. Randall just got extended. Anthony Edwards is on his big deal. So what this tells you is that the Timberwolves have decided that this is what they're running with for the next 3 years. Now,
All
look,
those
you
guys
can
are pot committed through the 28 season.
yeah,
All
exactly.
at least through the 28.
Yeah. So the next 3, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No,
And
I'm just saying like that's I'm
you're just
just making
confirming, yeah.
putting a point
So
on it.
So McDaniels and Reed are still probably viable trade options. So they do at least have that in terms of there's flexibility with them. I mean, nobody's gonna if Nas Reed hit the market at that cost, like he's gonna have suitors. Um, and I like it. Like we saw enough from the Timberwolves in the second half of last year to feel completely fine with them wanting to run this back. We actually said that the year before, and then they made that massive deal to try to give themselves a little bit more flexibility. And in reality, that's what they did. They traded Karl Anthony Towns so they could sign Naz Reid to this contract, and then it still allowed them to keep Julius Randle. So when you think of that as like the bigger move there, it gave
Yeah.
them more depth and more flexibility to just run this back. And we'll see. Like it's now the problem is okay, so Terrence Shannon Jr., who gave them good opportunity and good minutes in the playoffs, and I liked him when I saw him in Summer League last year. Rob Dillingham, who I'm not very big on, those guys are going to have to really start to step up because they're going to lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker now. They can't afford to keep him.
I was going to bring him up. Where would you like to see him land? I've heard two teams that are out there that are interested. It's Atlanta and Orlando, where I would love to see him in Orlando. You and I have been talking about Orlando a lot, and we like what they're building over there. And I think he's just a great fit. I think he's a great fit on any organization, to be fair.
Yeah, I think with both Atlanta and Orlando, to be honest, though, they have enough depth at the position that he plays that it's not great value for them at this point. Because he ends up kind of fourth or fifth in their guard rotation. Atlanta, maybe he moves up a little bit because they moved Terrence Mann. So I like it more Atlanta than I do with Orlando, because with Orlando, look, you're not counting on Jace Richardson, but with pardon me, with Bane, Suggs, and oh no, I guess would he slide into the third guard role in
I
Orlando?
think he would be, yeah, I think he'd be the third guard role. Yeah.
I take that back. So actually, I like it well enough. I don't. Orlando's books are going to start to get a little messy when you look at a deal for him too, because that's a very expensive
So
team.
yeah, again, I think he in that same range as the other guys that we like, the Dorian Finney-Smith, these high-end role players. I mean, I
I
think
think he.
same number.
Well, and honestly, he ends up because of positional need. He probably has more value than Dorian Finney-Smith does on the market because of age and position.
Hey, buddy, I think I get to break some news to you, and you're gonna love this. Jabari Smith Jr. signing a 5-year, $122 million extension with the Rockets, announced 10 minutes ago by Shams. So, right, I think you're muted, but I'm very excited for you.
No DFS. No
No
DFS. I want
DFS.
Jabari.
That
Yes.
takes DFS off the board. So that entire conversation we just had is this.
Becomes moot in real time. This is high quality
Well, this
podcasting
is
right
just
here.
like the last episode where we ended it, and I was like, "Who do you think the next player that's going to get traded is?" And then Kristaps Porzingis goes to Atlanta.
Free agency is happening incredibly fast. Real quick,
Yes.
for our listeners out there, if you're not following at Chris Lindsay Hoops on Threads, our boy is doing all the work. He is literally updating all these things in real time and
Yep.
sourcing and citing them. Credit to him for this work, but I am locked in on what he's doing right now because it's been as valuable a resource as I found in terms of giving you the information in real time.
Yeah, it just feels good. I love to be able to break good news to you.
That
So
I like
you're very excited.
I love the Rockets and I love this player. That actually makes me
Also,
like really excited.
let's talk about that value.
Yes.
24 million for a guy like Jabari Smith, who you still have stock in. That's really good if you actually believe that he can be the player that you think he can be. And you're
Now
not
that's
like to a max,
yeah.
one of the rookie max extensions.
I think the other part of it is no matter what, the asset play is still really smart because the same
Yeah.
conversations be had. Because now, if you're trading him to another team that believes in him, he has significant value at a contract that's going to be that low in 4 years when the cap goes up as much as it will at that point. Like $24 million for a player in when he's 27 and hopefully
Yeah.
at kind of on the upswing, that's nothing. Like that is a really good being a business for both player and team. And again, Raphael Stone just
Rafael
continues
Stone
to knock it
strikes
out of
again.
the park. Like,
Yeah.
boom.
It's him, Stevens, and Presti have been really
Yeah.
great. Um, we are gonna, like I said, we're gonna get to the Eastern Conference. I did just want to bring that up real quick.
Yeah.
Um,
That's yes.
Yeah, well, there you go. I broke so I again, so we can go back to our DFS talk. So I think more than likely he's going to get an offer from the Lakers, and I think he wants to stay. He would be
Yeah.
around again. But the other options, again, they remain for the same two teams or that we were talking about just about Nickeil Alexander Walker. I think the Magic and the
The
Hawks would
Hawks.
be great places for him to land.
I don't like him in Orlando just because with Orlando, Jonathan Isaac still needs to be able to get on the floor because of the impact he has, and you already have Franz and Powell. I really like him in Atlanta because Jalen Johnson's health is going to kind of always be a thing that we have to monitor because of the way that he plays, and he just continues to have injury concerns. And DFS gives you a really good amount of security at that position for that player, and helps just kind of not have to lean as hard on Jalen Johnson as a defensive player, which he's excellent at. But you can just do some things that alleviates a little bit of stress on him. And obviously, DFS is at his best as a spot up shooter off of kickouts, and that's what Trae Young is going to give you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for as much as we knock Trae Young on this podcast, and for good reason, the guy is a gifted passer. That is one of the things that he's led the league in assists multiple times. Sometimes he's only passing to his teammates in the positions that he wants them in. That's why he doesn't feel like a Tyrese Halliburton where he's putting him in the best position. Sometimes it's just like a kick out pass kind of thing. But I think he's played off ball a little bit more. And now they've got a lot of guys who can handle the ball and get Trae Young some like off ball movement, which is, I think that's part of what Quinn Snyder has been trying to implement in Atlanta since he got there. Like, what was it, like a year plus? I mean, has it been 2 full seasons?
It's been, yeah, he's got two. He came in at the end of,
Yeah,
not
the
last
end
season, but the
of,
season
yeah,
before.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
yeah,
So yeah,
probably 100 like 170 something games under his belt if I had to just spitball it.
yeah, that sounds about right. So yeah, I think Quinn Snyder, I think this is really starting to this team is starting to take a Quinn Snyder shape.
Yeah,
And I think that he's the kind of player that he would appreciate.
Yeah, friend of the pod, Zach Lowe, has made the point, but I will go ahead and pat myself on the back because I wrote 1,800 words about Trae Young's change right after I got to see him at the NBA Cup when they were one of the semifinalists here, and just seeing the little distinctions in terms of him just being a little bit smarter about shot decision, playing off ball with a little bit more movement. Everything is about 5 to 10% better of
but it's a
something.
move in the right direction.
Yeah, he needs to get this far, and he's made that much of a difference. But the
I
fact that
know.
he wouldn't make the change at all was, it is important. And like you said, it is. Hopefully, it's a reflection of player and coach finding some commonality, because Trae Young could really benefit from playing in a system like from completely buying into a system like Quinn Snyder plays, because it's going to make Trae Young look better in terms of his profile on the national stage, being a little less selfish, getting guys a little bit more involved in ways that are less, I always call it Ron doing the assists, where you're kind of forcing players into a position that's not always comfortable for them. It's why a lot of these players end up being very happy to leave Atlanta. And it feels like guys are, hopefully they're kind of building the right type of guys and getting a situation where, look, I'm not ready to say Atlanta's like going to challenge for the Eastern Conference title, which some people have really kind of gotten in front of their skis on this, but they've made good decisions. I like it.
I've liked everything Atlanta's doing. It's so funny. My buddy Chris, he's been high on the Hawks, and all I've been doing in the last couple of years is just dumping all over them about how it's a mid organization. They're not going anywhere, and they're a perennial 9 or 10 seed, and it's just like, why be in the middle? Why just be perpetually mediocre? And now they made all these moves, and I get a text from Chris, and I'm getting super excited about the Hawks, and I'm about to text him, and instead Chris texts me, and he goes, I'm out on the Hawks after this zinger move. He's completely out after. I was like, that made me like them more. I was like, are you kidding? If he can stay healthy, a lineup that is Young, Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Porzingis, and who am I missing?
Okongwu's probably going to be starting. You either have Johnson or Okongwu starting at the 4, so it'll be interesting. Or Reece Shea, it might be Young, Daniels, Reece Shea, Johnson, and Porzingis is the starting lineup, and then Okongwu comes off the bench. Because Okongwu can't really guard 4s, although it does depend on the matchup because he is a little bit mobile. But the problem is, you just said if Kristaps Porzingis can be healthy, and the reality.
Apparently.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, the guy, look, he has all the known injuries that has now become like just an absolute insane number of marks on his ledger. But now we have the fact that he had something. We still haven't been told what the hell was going on.
I
That
mean, yeah, is everyone else
opacity.
in Boston okay? Because
Yeah, seriously, are we was he Typhoid Mary in some epidemic that we are going to be like? Is he doing his Rudy Gobert cosplay? Like, what's going on with whatever the hell is happening? Because a big man who already has lower extremity issues now having respiratory problems. First of all,
it's getting a
like,
little weird.
so yeah, separate of the basketball, I worry about a player's health when they have type of respiratory issues and they have the frame and size of somebody like Kristaps Porzingis. But
I
going
mean,
back to the basketball part of
unicorn,
it,
but like, do unicorns have respiratory issues that we need to know about? Is this something
yeah,
we should
right.
have seen coming?
Yeah,
Um,
but just real quick,
yeah,
I agree in general. I like what the Hawks have done, but Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis are so foundational to what they can be. And unfortunately, those are two guys that I have to see that they're going to have to catch lightning in a bottle for a season. This isn't like a sustainable group that's going to be really good for 4 or 5 years. They're betting on next year them hitting on the East being down. That's what this feels like to me.
absolutely. But I think every move they made has not like it
Uh,
hasn't hampered the team as far as their long. I think they've made some
Agree.
really trades.
Yeah.
They fleeced the Pelicans, which I know you want to talk about. Actually, you know what? Do you just want to have that Pelicans talk now that we're just dumping on them for getting fleeced by the Atlanta Hawks and everybody else they've ever traded with?
Well, okay. So on our last pod, I briefly went into a conversation about how it feels like we're in a renaissance of organizations being poorly run because of hubris. And I was clearly talking about the Suns and the Knicks and the Mavericks and the Pelicans and Joe Dumars with Troy Weaver yagoing in his ear said, "Hold my fucking beer," and had one of the worst weeks of organizational decisions we have seen since this Pistons or since the Pistons were being lampooned by Troy Weaver like 7 years ago. Like, I hated the Jordan Poole deal, but I kind of was holding back a little bit on it. But the more I thought about it, the more it pissed me off. But part of the reason the more it pissed me off is you have Jordan Poole and DeJounte Murray in a backcourt, hypothetically in 2 seasons, which you already said was a problem. And then you draft Jeremiah Fears. So you have three guys who can only play point guard who all have to, like, DeJounte Murray's a deflated asset. Jordan Poole's probably not getting anything on the trade market. And you got to figure out how you're developing Jeremiah Fears, who cannot shoot the basketball from the 3-point line on the team. They can't shoot the basketball from the 3-point line. Let's start there. That was already frustrating. And then the Derek Queen deal, which everybody out here has now heard of ad nauseum. But for anybody who didn't read my thing, the night that before I was doing the full breakdown of the cost of the deal, just breaking down the fit, the idea of Derek Queen, one, let's talk about culturally, a player who there was questions about his ability to stay locked in on his conditioning and his weight is going to go to New Orleans, which just as a city is a very difficult city for anybody to not gain 5 pounds in when they first move. But then you're going to pair him with Zion Williamson. Off the floor, I don't want those two guys hanging out. And then on the floor, they're two bigs who need to be on ball, who can't defend and can't shoot. So now you have all these non-shooters and a bunch of bigs that can't defend. This team is going to be a mess, and they don't have their draft pick from next year after they're going to suck. And see.
You know, sometimes we announce when we are about to cook, and other times it just kind of happens impromptu. And that was Aaron Bullwinkle cooking for a minute, and it was wonderful to listen to. Thank you for you just said everything that I wanted to say. So
I've
that
needed
was
to get
awesome.
that off my chest. There's not enough characters through text messages for me to subject my friends to how I really felt about this whole thing.
Yeah.
But I was messaging you on draft day. Like, it was just the
I'm just trying to
whole
remember the Troy Weaver text you sent me. You're like, don't we have enough evidence that Troy Weaver is just not good at this job? And I think it's like the same thing as like the Belichick head coaches. Like if you look at
yes.
Belichick's head coaching tree, it's actually terrible. But
It's like
everyone
Josh McDaniels keeps getting a head coaching
he
job.
keeps, yeah, Josh McDaniels keeps getting hired because he was
Yeah.
tangentially associated with Bill Belichick. It's the same way that Troy Weaver, he ran Detroit into the ground. And then he still keeps getting other jobs because they're like, well, he did work for Sam Presti for a while. He must know something.
And
And he doesn't actually.
the crazy parallels. Like, shout out to Sam Vecini who broke this down. The number 7 pick being our boy Killian Hayes in Detroit. him
Mm.
trading to bring in veteran players who are on longer contracts and getting rid of unprotected, like all the stuff that he did structurally to set Detroit back into being the organization that tied the record for losses in a season. He comes to the next place and Joe Dumars goes, you know who I should hit up for the decision making? I've got a guy. Let me call Troy. And he's like, you know what? It didn't work the first time, but you brilliant bastard, let's run it back. Like, what
Well,
the fuck are we
I
doing?
mean, what if like it's just because he was in Detroit? He's like, you're a Detroit guy, right?
Yeah. this is and then I heard the other thing that was funny is I can't remember if it was Ansi Salah, who was the guy who took over for Landry Fields, or who it was that had a relationship in New Orleans, who clearly had the intel about how much Joe Dumars cared about Derek Queen to know they could squeeze for that. Nobody moves an unprotected pick to get up from 23 to 13. That is just not even sensible value. You're not getting into the heart of the lottery. You're getting into literally the penultimate pick in the back end of the lottery for a guy that, like, I don't even care how you feel about Derek Queen. Next year's draft is a good draft. What you like? It's just every part
It's
of it.
nonsense.
It's
It's New Orleans. New Orleans is really just it's really going for the crown of just like the worst run organization. And it's not even just the front office. It's their facilities, it's their health coaches, it's like their decision making top to bottom. It's even the players and the personnel. Everything about them is just such a mess. And you kind of wonder like, is basketball long for New Orleans?
You and I've had that talk.
NBA?
If they change their name to the Tropics, I would be 0% surprised. Like, that is the level of ineptitude that we're now functioning at. And like, I
They might need to
understand.
change it to like an actual corporate sponsor just so they can have enough revenue to stay in business. Like they might need
Yeah,
to be the New Orleans brawny paper towel guy.
they're just going to be the New
They
Orleans
got to
Smoothie
sell the team,
Kings.
but yeah, they're just going to sell it for parts. They're going to start having big ass logos across the chest. Like they won't even have room for the guys' names on there.
The
New Orleans,
Florida Lee is going to be replaced by like a Bojangles logo.
yes,
Like,
I'm telling you, man. Yeah,
it's
like a crescent moon, and yeah, New Orleans. It's tough basketball right now.
we can be done with it after this, but I implore anybody who's listening to this who thinks that I'm being too harsh or anything else, go look at that roster and tell me how in the hell you can think that's anything better than the 13th or 14th team in the West.
Yeah, they've just won 21 games. They don't have their own pick, and they're probably going to win somewhere in the same ballpark of like 25 to 28 games. They're going to be
Yeah.
in that same range. I just don't really see that and especially like you're banking on Zion being healthy, which
And
makes me think like a Zion trade has to be somewhat at least talked about.
But so again, if any of that is the case, right? Like I'm totally fine with the construct, the conceit being that we're going to trade Zion. Then you cannot get rid of your draft pick next year.
Yeah,
That
if
is
you're going to get
that
rid of Zion, then you need your
it,
draft pick.
it
And
makes no sense because the thing is if you are going in like if you think you're going to be good enough, then you're just lying to yourself. Nobody
yeah,
believes that. But if you think, okay, we're going to figure this out and go into developmental mode, then why in what everybody thinks is going to be another really good draft would you get out of the draft as a team that always has to function financially in a way that has to be smart enough where you're on lower end contracts because you're not going to be you're obviously not a big draw. Just like every step of it, you're just like this, you didn't miss a step. You fell all the way down. That stairway in Guangzhou or wherever in China, you fell down from the top all the way bottom into some slow motion like it's an Austin Powers movie. Like it is incredible.
yeah, New Orleans is it's becoming the real butt of the league, man, the butt of the joke. So, a few more little housekeeping notes on the Western Conference, and we can switch over to the East. Kyrie signs his extension. He's going to miss most, if not all, of next year.
And
I'm missing something.
opts out to take less money to sign the extension, by the way, for anybody out there. Just
I
saying. I
mean,
think he was
who else was he getting that money from?
well, no, but all I'm saying is if you're Kyrie, it made sense for you because of your situation, but he also could have just opted in and punted until next year. But he actually helps the Mavericks by doing this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he likes that organization. He's there
Yeah,
for small.
Nico and
But
him are boys, all that. But I'm just saying, because of the conversation we were having about
it
LeBron, we just watched
takes less
Kyrie
money.
and LeBron,
Yeah.
who are inextricably linked, do some of what we were talking about. Circumstances are very different. He's an injured player. He's got a bad injury history. It might be his last big contract, but it was still just kind of an
Yeah.
interesting thing for Kyrie to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the right thing. I think everybody expected it. Don't get me wrong.
And Chris Paul has been rumored to be circling two teams because he wants to be closer to home, the Suns and the Clippers. Two teams he's played for before. Uh, if I had to guess, I don't think he's going back to the Suns.
What? Why? How does?
Why would anybody want to be on that organization if they had a choice not to be?
Why does it make sense for player or organization? Is Chris Paul better than Tyus Jones at this point? Probably
At this,
not. Was
yeah,
did Tyus Jones make a huge difference? And I mean, Chris Paul's maybe a little bit better of a defender, but not by much, just because of the degradation of
maybe
age.
because Chris Paul's a better lob thrower to their new center, Mark Williams.
Sure, until Mark
Sure.
Williams' body dissolves like a wet bounty sheet. Like what?
Yeah.
This is the Hornets just doing everything they can to throw him at somebody is
The
really
Suns will
telling.
just like anytime there's a Charlotte center, they're like, give me that. The
Yeah,
only
yeah,
reason
we'll take.
they didn't go after Yusuf Nurkic is that they already got rid of him. So that's a nice little transition into the Eastern Conference. Yusuf Nurkic going to Utah and probably what feels like a salary dump move. They'll probably waive him, or if not, just like
Well, I mean, I don't really think it can't totally be a salary dump because it was a player for player, and both guys are expiring
well, no,
contracts.
but the Hornets also got a second round pick and Colin Sexton, who's an actual serviceable player.
Yeah, no, but so that's what I'm saying though.
Utah got the
Utah,
pick.
Utah got the second round pick. You're saying?
Yes.
Oh, you said the
Uh,
Hornets. Okay, that
I'm not
okay.
sure. Well, now I need to look this up because I don't know. I can't remember which one happened.
It,
Somebody
it,
got a second round pick. I just
it
can't
would
remember.
make a lot more sense if Utah did get the draft asset because then the trade makes a lot more sense. I don't like you and I had talked about this online. I don't like this deal for the Hornets mainly because
Yeah.
I like Colin Sexton, but if you're the Hornets right now at your guard forward positions, Brandon Miller can play 2 or 3, but you've got LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller kind of as your 1 and 2, and then you just invested draft resources on Con Knipple and Liam McNeely, who are 2 to 3s. But Colin Sexton is not a point guard. He's not your backup point guard. The only way Colin Sexton plays backup point guard is if he dribbles the ball up the court and then gets the ball to Brandon Miller on pin downs and stuff where he gets the offense going once he gets kind of coming around a curl, getting downhill. I just think you're taking, and Colin Sexton's now going to be on a contract season as the young bull trying to definitely earn himself a good deal. So I just feel like you're going to be taking away too many developmental opportunities in terms of shots and minutes from all the youth you just brought in there. It's a weird deal to me.
Well, yeah, and Colin Sexton's career high in assists is 4.9. So he's not exactly Alonzo Ball like level replacement because Alonzo isn't actually a gifted and willing passer. But
He's more a LiAngelo Ball level of passer than he is a Lonzo Ball level of passer. But anyways,
well, oh, by the way, the Hornets were the one who got the second round pick, by the way. So,
yeah,
so how the hell did they get? Did they get a good player, like a player I like, and a second round pick for a guy who's useless and Yusuf Nurkic?
I mean, I get what Utah was doing because they needed to clear. Like one of my complaints about Clayton Jr. going there was because of the glut of guards that they have that are offensive minded guards and not real playmakers, which I think is going to be one of the challenges for Clayton Jr. But why are you giving up an asset to bring in Yusuf Nurkic, who isn't going to like? What does Yusuf Nurkic give you if you're Utah? Even
Doesn't
do you
even give
want
you
him
like
as your
veteran
backup?
leadership. No one likes the guy.
Yeah, and like you
I haven't
don't
met
want him as
anyone that's like defended him. They're like, this guy is kind of a dick. So it's not like he's like, oh yeah, he's gonna mentor our young bigs, and he's like, no, he's not.
yeah. Everybody's like Walker
That's why
Kessler's
it felt to
probably
me
the
that
adult in the room.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's was why it felt to me that this wasn't like a player that Utah would keep. I think they were trying to dump the Colin Sexton money, but then they sent out an asset to do it. And it's not like
That's the
Colin
part
Sexton's
that's
a
weird.
negative asset to me. So and then they got a guy like Nurkic. Why would they bring him in? I don't get that deal at all for Utah. I
Yeah, I
get
mean,
it somewhat for the Hornets because at least if nothing else, you still got an asset out of it. And Colin Sexton's not like he's not untradeable. But it makes very little sense from the Utah
I mean,
perspective.
Nurkic shouldn't even play minutes ahead of Filipowski, and whatever. We don't like
Yeah.
it. Do we? We didn't really talk much about. Never mind. We don't really need to talk about Utah. We can keep it moving.
No,
So,
I don't.
sure,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
whole different.
yeah. That's fine. We can keep it moving.
Yeah. Is
Okay.
there well, was there anybody in the East? Bobby Portis signs his extension. Is there any teams in the East that you particularly wanted to talk about? Did you want to talk about the Lonzo Ball trade?
Uh, you know, the,
Poro?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. I like that for Cleveland because I think what Lonzo Ball gives you as a connective passer is exactly what Cleveland's been working towards in terms of how their offense has been structured. And he's just the perfect guy for that. Now the problem is, and it was the reason a lot of people were upset, and I get it. Like I'm not an Isaac Okoro guy. Like I think we know what he is, and unfortunately, what he is probably a player that is so limited as a shooter that he's not a functional everyday NBA player. He's in that Josh, no offense to your boy, Josh Okogie kind of realm of like, if he's giving you spot minutes, you're fine. But once you have to lean on him, you're going to be in trouble. But the Bulls, I think, just kind of had hit the end of the road with having to bear the burden of Lonzo Ball's injury history. And I have no insight on this, but it's tough for a team to have to contend with 4 seasons of an injured player. There's just a lot of resource allocation and contending with that in terms of the emotional and intellectual part of it that I think the Bulls just decided to get off of.
I get that. I understand everything about what you're saying, but is it impossible for the Bulls to ask for any kind of draft compensation in trades like this? They just love a player for player swap. They love never paying any kind of luxury tax. They love rolling out this mediocre team in our third largest market in the NBA, a team that has championship history, and they refuse to ask for an asset. Or if they ask, apparently they get told no, and they go, okay. They just take it.
I
I
have
don't
no notes.
feel for them. I think there were reports from Kevin O'Connor and other people, like trusted NBA sources, that said that there were first round draft pick compensation offers for Lonzo Ball during the draft. Now maybe it's a late first round pick and it's not super valuable, but you could just do that deal. Why not just take the pick instead of a player, an Isaac Okoro, who is rotational at best? He couldn't
Well,
even. I don't get it.
not only is he questionable in rotation as rotational at best, he can't shoot the ball,
He can't
and I
shoot.
I don't know if anybody has paid attention to the roster composition of the Bulls, but
It's
they are
so bad.
loaded with players who can't shoot the basketball, and they just keep like bringing in more players who can't shoot the basketball, and they fired their shooting coach who had some success with helping Modest Pizelis and Josh Giddey shoot the basketball. I
Giddy had a
look,
career high in 3-point shooting, and they got
yeah,
rid of the coach.
I don't understand the thinking behind why they never seem to get any draft capital in their deals. And you and I talked about it when we evaluated the Darren Fox deal.
Yeah,
We've talked about it a couple of other times. I, Maybe the argument for them, and I could see it, is that they have so many young players that eventually you hit a cap of what you think. But no matter what, like having assets is having assets, right? And if you're a team
yeah.
that's trying to work your way into a certain level, asset accumulation should still be part of the construction and the thought. I don't really get that part of it. I also don't know what the validity to what the Lonzo Ball offers were. If teams were offering a low first round pick, it seems kind of silly not to get in there because this was a draft that I think there's going to be some guys in that 25 to 30 range who were very interesting projects and definitely at least rotational NBA players, including Liam McNeely, who we already talked about, who would have been a player that offered exactly what they needed from a shooting standpoint. But I don't know if that's true, and so I'm not going to bury them if that wasn't. The deal on itself doesn't really do much for me either way. But your point and your greater point is something I have no arguments against, and I'm going to be sheepish here because I don't want to be, too negative about the organization. So
Yeah, I know, when we talk about the Bulls, I'm usually very careful not to put you on the spot, but I have to read this to you. I follow Chicago Bull Central on Threads. It's a great account if you like to, get an outsider's perspective on the Chicago Bulls organization. And they had a post and it just said, "We really traded our core for nothing." So this is who the Bulls traded: is DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Alex Caruso, and Lonzo Ball. Here is what they got in return: Josh Giddey, Kevin Herter, Chris Duarte, Isaac Okoro, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, their own 25 first round pick, and 2 second round picks.
I
That
don't
is
think
what they
that's
got.
fair. I don't think that's very good.
No, that's not. That's just not very good. It's just
um,
organizational misconduct. And I'm going to leave it at that. I just don't understand what the Bulls are doing. And I want the Bulls to be good, damn it. And from what I understood, they were out there dangling um, Kobe White during
well,
the
and
draft.
now the talk is apparently they're trying to trade Io, which I like.
I'm a huge, and I actually like the Sumu, but I like him as a
I
guy
know
who's
I
very,
love Io. That's part of my
yeah,
problem. I think he's a perfect third guard in the NBA as a guy that can toggle on and off ball, plays good
yeah,
defense. He's turned himself into a good enough shooter. I think it's silly to get rid of that type of player, particularly if you want to play an up tempo brand of basketball that the Bulls want to play, because you're going to have strong players on your in your reserves that can give you consistent long stretches of minutes because you want to be keeping the pace playing at this level.
yeah.
I look, we can
I
even real even the
no, go ahead.
draft pick even the draft pick to me reflected, like, for those that don't know, they took Noah Essengay. I wrote kind of substantially about that pick. Feel however
Yeah,
you want to feel about Essengay, but the thing I don't get is his main concern is whether or not he's going to be able to shoot the basketball. For those keeping score at home, that means the Bulls' last five first round picks, pardon me, have been Patrick Williams, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, Modest Buzelis, and Noah Essengay. And every single one of those guys, their
that's
swing skill is shooting. The only one who has looked decent as a developmental project as a shooter is Modest Buzelis.
Gonzalez. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I I don't I don't
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't I don't like I'm
I
at a
don't know
loss for
what
words.
I don't know what they're valuing in the drafts, and I don't know what they value when they make these trades. They should be trying to restock the cabinet, and they seemingly just keep taking lesser players and then getting no compensation in return for doing so.
I
That's the end of my
I
Bulls.
I do want to, because I always want to be fair. Game makes a lot of sense for how they're trying to play in terms of an up tempo brand of basketball. Josh Giddey, for as much as everybody wanted to bury the trade, I liked the trade at the time it happened. I kind of got off ship. I'm not a big Josh Giddey guy, but people are, and I get it. And I actually think when you look at it in terms of the production they got and what they think the player can be, the Caruso trade, despite them not getting draft equity, is a better deal than people are giving it credit
It
for.
is. It
Yeah,
is.
and I
I'm not
also
I
think
didn't at the time I thought it was a little bit of a stretch, but I was like, guys, you do realize that they're trading essentially their sixth man for a guy who was a starting guard on the Thunder last year.
and a guy who
And no, and when people said, "Oh, well, they didn't get a first round pick out of or a second round pick," I'm like, "Well, Josh Giddey was the first round pick because he's still on his rookie scale contract. So
yeah,
technically,
and
he is the asset that they didn't."
exactly, and had Josh Giddey, like, let's just in a vacuum, Josh Giddey was in last year's draft. Josh Giddey would have been a top 5 to 6 pick in last year's draft. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so,
Yeah.
like, any of those things, I think sometimes people, it's very easy to get caught in the meta narrative of it, which is totally fair. But the Bulls have done some things that put them in the right direction of what they want, but they do just have some habits that are very vexing and
Yeah.
difficult to get at times. So
Yeah.
go Bulls.
Yeah. Go.
Like,
I still
I'm going to
want them to
see
be
you in
good.
summer league. I want you to be awesome. Like, I am. That's what I want. So anything that's critical comes from that place. It's not because I'm trying to bury the organization, much like any other organization we talk about. I probably shouldn't have put that caveat on it, but I feel sensitive when I'm ever in this space. I'm just gonna be honest. So
Well, yeah, I want them to be good. And it feels like they're doing everything they can to not be that. And it's like you said, vexing might be the best word. I
yeah,
don't
and to
understand.
their credit, it's not like it's not that they're doing everything to not do that. Like, there are organizations where I'm like, it's that they're doing things in a way that just never aligns with, like, the current. Like, I get zagging, but there's only so much zagging you can do before sometimes you have to go, well, this is how teams do this, and maybe we need to replicate this. And it seems like they are so stubborn about some of that stuff.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Is there, like I said, we just touched on, I mean, so we kind of touched on the Bulls. We like the fit for Lonzo in Cleveland. I think he addresses a need. He's a good size guard, great. He's a good on-ball defender. Again, all of this hinging on the fact of is he healthy? But you never really know with a guy like Lonzo. We can stay with Milwaukee. They just signed Bobby Portis for a 3-year, $44 million deal. Like I said, they're looking, we talked about Brooke Lopez earlier, possibly, being on the out. So that does leave them with a little flexibility financially. Pat Connaughton, they will probably extend. Is there anybody that
Pat Connaughton opted in.
he opted into his player
He had a player
option?
option. He already opted
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Okay. So again, so Brooke Lopez does leave in free agency. That does create a little bit of cap space for a team that needs to kind of build around the edges. Is there anybody that you've been looking at that Milwaukee should be looking at?
Well, I mean, I think if they could have their druthers, Miles Turner would have to be at the very top of their wish list if they can afford him, because he's the perfect replacement for Brooke Lopez, right? Like the style of play makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense, but I don't know if they can get in on that financially, and I don't know that Indiana's gonna let Miles Turner go. But that guy just immediately jumps to the top of the list for me for what would make the most sense for the Bucks.
Yeah. Orlando's been declining a few players options. I think Mo Wagner had his option was declined, but I think they're
You
working toward re-signing him.
Yeah, they have bird rights on him. And I mean, I think everybody would be completely stunned considering the season Mo Wagner had last year before he got hurt, which was
Yeah.
he was one of the most impactful offensive performers off the bench and one of the most efficient. And then there's the additional element of like, look, this isn't a Thanasis situation. Like Mo Wagner is a very productive and high quality player, and his brother is one of your franchise pillars. You have to assume that they're going to bring him back.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it feels like to me that Orlando's still got another move to make, and I just don't. I'm trying to think of like what it is they're trying to. I mean, they could obviously use more shooting. That's never going to be a thing that they don't need, considering the two guys they have as the head of the snake. Uh, with Bankero and Wagner, they're not high end 3-point shooters. They don't shoot a high volume of them. But I'm trying to, like I said, we've already linked them to a couple of guys that we talked about: Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Dorian Finney-Smith. I feel like there's still a move away, and Orlando's becoming my dark horse team to take the East, or at least compete for the top spot in the East. And I'm still wondering, where's Detroit? They have been very quiet,
Well,
and maybe that's
I think
because they're worried about the Malik Beasley news.
that's definitely got to be at the forefront of their thinking, because Malik Beasley, obviously, they were already going to have to contend with the fact that he was a UFA, and was going to command some pretty good money, and they were going to have to make a decision about what is the right amount of money to pay for Malik Beasley, because for as good as Malik Beasley looked for them, he obviously was a little challenged in the playoffs. And I think you can also talk yourself into the reality that part of the reason Malik Beasley looked that good is because of the steps forward that Cade Cunningham took. And maybe you can find another shooter, possibly. I mean, they're probably not going to hit 319 threes, right? Like he hit the second most threes in the league last year, but you can probably talk yourself into that. And now, because of the news with the gambling allegations, and look, even if these don't prove out to be true, Terry Rozier's season after his allegations, I don't know if anybody saw what happened, but Jesus Christ, was he bad. Now,
So,
maybe he was carrying a guilty conscience. Maybe it was just the pressure of the circumstances. Who knows? But like Malik Beasley isn't necessarily like the most mentally tough player. No offense to him, just in terms of how we think about him. So if you're the Pistons, this probably has to change your thought process. They've got to be, I think, a team that may be looking at Nikhil Alexander-Walker, because I think they have a little bit of cap flexibility themselves. I also think that part of it too is if you look at the Pistons, their big move is Jaden Ivey coming back. I
yeah.
think that they get to look at their roster and feel very comfortable with what they did, and knowing that one of the most important players for the first half of their season comes back this year, and that is going to be kind of their biggest addition.
Yeah, I mean, people have been really forgetting about that guy. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. You just keep forgetting that he got injured, and because I think it's because of how well Detroit played without him that people kind of like, turned. I wouldn't say turned away from him, but I think they marginalized him a little bit by saying that maybe he wasn't as necessary to the team's success, even though he's still a very good young player with freaky athleticism and does a lot of stuff that could be very helpful to this Detroit team. Who again, with the East as wide open as it is, you got Atlanta. I'm not ruling out Indiana still, even despite the Halliburton injury. Detroit, New York, and Cleveland. And then after that, it's a very gettable division. Orlando.
You
I'm sorry, I forgot to include Orlando. That's my
yeah,
fault.
yeah. You know
But
who
after that,
yeah, the East is wide open. Yeah, sorry.
it absolutely is. And you know what, Boston. I think we have to give a lot of credit. I think that's something we haven't done yet. The moves that Brad Stevens made to save that organization about $260 million in taxes and second apron penalties. That was so good. That is some, and he got assets back, which is insane. He had two bad contracts, and Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and he ends up netting 3 second-round picks. Plus, he gets a guy like Niang, who's like a rotational guy. And who else did
And
they acquire?
and the Boston
Anthony
fans
Simons.
the Boston fans are going to love George Niang
Yeah.
because he's just their type of guy, right? Like he talks so much shit. He's kind of he's kind of the natural progression of Brian Scalabrine, like this kind of out of shape, weird,
Joey.
awkward player who still just gets it done and chirps a lot. Like he's very entertaining in that way, and like they're gonna like that. Brad Stevens deserves all the credit. I want to go back to Detroit because I just thought about something.
Oh,
A
go ahead.
player that I think to watch for them, who I this just popped in my head, but makes a lot of sense for what they need. Gerson Yabusele is definitely not staying in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I think his style of play as a stretch power forward who bangs, that's a
They don't
guy
need
that I
another
think
fighter in Detroit, Aaron.
he doesn't have. First of all, I think they are kind of leaning into that, but I also don't think that that's like his full on.
Another guy
Like
who's going to throw
no,
hands.
he throws his wide ass around. He has
That's
not
right.
been like a guy getting in fights. He's just been hitting. He's half Rick Mahorn just from the waist down, not the
Yeah.
waist up, right? Like so, but
Uh,
I
the
think that
team that
he'll.
I've heard him linked to is the Spurs.
I mean, he makes sense there too. But
Makes
like, if
sense.
I'm just
And he has a connection with Wembanyama.
yeah, but if you're the Spurs, look at the Spurs two, three, and fours, and the interchangeability, but also like they have like 10 guys that play shooting guard, small forward, or power forward right now. I don't think they don't need to bring in another guy. Like I loved Bryant, the kid that they took out of Arizona, Carter
I
Bryant,
did
the kid they
too,
took out
yeah.
of
I
Arizona.
thought it was a really nice
But
pick.
I'm not even sure how much he's going to get on the floor right now when you look at Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper's going to play at some too. Jeremy Sohan, like it gets they have a glut there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, they've got moves to make. They've got definitely
yeah,
got options there. I think a player that a lot of teams are going to be keeping a very close eye on, especially just considering his skill set and the necessity that it will command around the league, is Ty Jerome.
oh yeah, absolutely. But the thing, Ty Jerome, unfortunately, is a victim of his own success in some ways because he was so bad in the playoffs outside of that 127-point performance that now teams are skittish, thinking that because of the
Yeah.
injury history and how good he was during the regular season, that the number is not going to fit what you expect as the production, particularly in the points in the games that matter. But look, a guard that's a versatile combo guard always has a place in this league,
Yeah,
especially a guy that can get hot.
he really Sam Darnold himself. Had a great regular season and then blew it in the last game of the year in the playoffs. Probably cost himself about 30 to $50 million over the term of his next contract. I mean, he's going to get paid, but he could have been commanding like a much higher number had he had a more impactful performance. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people
That's
whatever the high end of the mid level exception is like 14.7 million or something like that. A lot of people think that he could slot right into one of those on a contending team if he wanted to. But that's what you're making is 14 million, which, if he had like I said, a better playoff performance, maybe he's looking in the 18 to 20 million dollar range right
Yeah,
now.
and,
But
and your analogy is perfect because Cleveland, much like Minnesota, wait, you know what? I think we're going to be fine without you.
they were cool to let you walk, man,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. Like we love
Um,
you, we appreciate what you did, but we're gonna go ahead and let some other guy take this role. So, Sam Merrill is going to be prioritizing
oh
free
yeah, that was another
agency.
one I forgot to bring up. Sam Merrill. That's a nice re-signing at a nice number. I like
Yeah,
that.
I mean he's. I think everybody knew that they were going to work harder to get him than they were Ty Jerome because the cost difference and
Yeah.
the fact that the body of work in terms of health, defensive consistency, and the fact that one guy has to command the ball a little bit more to get going, whereas Sam Merrill is just purely additive or he's not on the floor, right? If he doesn't have it going, you're just kind of like, thanks, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I mean, they still, Cleveland's got, salary cap constraints as well. They got
Yeah.
four guys at the top they have to pay. They got Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen. They're still paying all those guys.
Well,
So
and
yeah,
don't
I mean,
forget, don't wait, wait. DeAndre Hunter makes like $27 million this season.
does he really?
Yes, DeAndre Hunter, like I'll look up the number right now, but
That's
DeAndre Hunter,
wild if he's making that. That's a lot of money for DeAndre.
maybe I'm a little off. Maybe it was 22, but it's not an insignificant number for
Yeah,
what he is. And it is actually part of the problem with the deal for him and the fact that they may not be able to move him. He makes 25 million next season. 24 million next season,
Jesus.
25 the following season. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean he got signed to that big contract. I mean, it was 4 for 90 million by Atlanta, and it felt like a little bit steep, but his value was oversized in Atlanta, and it's actually hurtful in Cleveland because of that number. And that's why
yeah.
they made the deal for Karis LeVert because LeVert was going to be a free agent, and so it was going to be harder to control him. So they called themselves bringing in Hunter, who they got for 2 more years. But then they got to really look at DeAndre Hunter, and the thing about DeAndre Hunter is he can shoot the hell out of the ball, but that's all he actually gives you. Like when you watch him play, he doesn't pass the ball. He mucks up their timing and spacing because he's a black hole. And defensively, his reputation is here and his execution is like somewhere down here. And I need him to actually enter the screen.
Yeah.
Like
Is there anybody else in the East? There's been a lot more movement in the West. Is there any other free agency stuff that you want to cover in the Eastern Conference?
there's nothing that pops off of my head that was something kind of like bigger. Do you remember any other kind of nibbles around the fringes that were stuff?
We
But
we did forget about the reigning champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They made two quiet small moves that I thought were really nice. 3 years, 24 million with a team option for Jalen Williams, Jay Will. That's the center. And then 3 years, $9 million for AJ Mitchell, the guard that showed a lot of promise before he got injured last season and had a weird one game, couple of minutes stint in the NBA Finals, and
your
then
least favorite guest appearance in the
I was
entire
just what the
playoffs.
hell is that guy doing? But I like AJ Mitchell a lot. I like the stuff.
No,
He's fearless. He's a good
yeah.
player. He's got good size. And then Jalen Williams, he just feels like another one of those locker room guys that Oklahoma City loves. I mean, everyone on the team loves him. And he's skilled. Don't get me wrong. They're not just keeping him around because he's a fun guy to hang with. He's a good passer. He's a willing shooter, especially at his size. I actually wanted to look at this and wanted to see what his 3-point percentage was last year because I actually thought that it was really good. Um, and then the minutes. I mean, with as big as the West is getting with all these centers, having this much size, now the Thunder have Hartenstein, Jalen Williams, and they just drafted Thomas Sorber. So they've got three dudes who have really soft hands. They know they defend the rim well, and you can almost run your offense through them a little bit because they're really good passers.
Yeah, the last one is actually one of the keys to what they've constructed there, and also one of the things I really love. One, you and I had talked about 2 weeks ago whether or not Jalen Williams may end up a cap casualty, and both you and I had said how much we like him and we hope that he was brought back. So I'm very happy to see this. It's really reflective of his impact as a locker room guy because if you're projecting where Jalen Williams is on the depth chart for this team 2 years from now, he's maybe the third or fourth big,
Yeah.
right? Like, and he's kind of already there, but he's been very good at just coming in and giving the minutes that he needs to. But the developmental ecosystem that they're putting Thomas Sorber in as a guy who was a fringe lottery pick, he went number 15, but he has some challenges in terms of mobility. He's not the tallest guy. He's 6'9" at center, but very long. But now he gets to play with two centers, Jalen Williams being an undersized guy, Isaiah Hartenstein being a phenomenal rebounder and passer, who blend some of the best skills that this guy has in a way that he's going to learn from both of these guys. And like, I may be accrediting too much of this to Sam Presti's ability to play four-dimensional chess. I'm using that multiple times now, but you can't ever oversell Sam Presti's ability to do that. And so it's just it's smart. It's always smart. Everything that, because even if they have to get off Jalen Williams, somebody will take that contract. $8 million a year for what he gives you is not like,
and they got a team option on the last year. So like,
which they always get, like,
which
right?
they always get. So they're like, hey, we're going to pay you. We're going to take care of you. It's the same thing they did with, I think they did the same thing with Wiggins. And I want to say they did the same thing with Joe, but I might be wrong.
Wiggins, Joe, and Hartenstein, I believe, all have team options on their last year.
So Hartenstein's the obvious casualty. It's the $29 million that he's owed whenever the extensions kick in for the big three. But then that's how, like, Oklahoma City has positioned themselves to keep restocking the cabinet. Hartenstein's going to do just fine, and he's going to be a Thunder legend forever. I think he understood that when he signed the contract. And again, it's why the Thunder took care of him in the first place. He made it's something like 2 years, almost 60 million with the team. And then he gets the team option for the last year, which is another 20, it's 29 million there. But like,
and he's already earned the entire contract.
But he's earned it. But yeah,
he's already earned the entire contract.
Yes.
Yeah,
so he earned more money. So Oklahoma City, not like, it's the only organization that I know that players are like happy to get sent there, even when they were bad. Because they're like, I know this organization is going to take care of me no matter what. And they always do. They're like,
they really do.
Sam Presti goes to these guys and he's like, hey, we're going to trade you. Is there anywhere you want to go? Because we can try and make that happen if we can. And I respect that. They appreciate it. Austin Rivers has talked about it. Al Horford's talked about it. These guys get taken care of in the Thunder organization, and then they go on to other places. And Oklahoma City is happy to see him go, and they find ways to replace these guys with these replacement level players without paying the high price tag on the veterans.
Well, and your point, like going back to the conversation about smartly run organizations, when you have veterans of the type of Q rating of Chris Paul and Al Horford amongst their peers, who then leave an organization that they got traded to that at the time was not supposed to be in a good circumstance, they leave and the team treats them the way they did. That only adds to why people, like you're saying, it's that conversation of like, if you're a free agent and you've had a conversation with those guys and they're like, look, Oklahoma City's going, the fans are awesome, the organization is well run, and if they don't end up deciding to keep you, they're actually going to make sure that they do the best thing for you. Like, how many organizations in the NBA get to claim that?
Chris Paul told them exactly where he wanted to go. And they're like, hey, just work with us this year. Commit to what we're trying to do. They had that amazing run, which got Chris Paul on a lot of people's radars. I mean, not to say that he wasn't valued around the league.
No, but it brought him back up because
the perception his stock was really low. Yeah. And then they built it back up and they're like, wow, he's still like a high level player in this league. And, the Phoenix Suns went out and got him. Al Horford, they were like, hey, can you play every other day? And then we'll trade you back to Boston. And they got a first round pick out of that deal, by the way, from Boston, which was worth it for them because they won a championship, worth it for Oklahoma City because they got an asset out of a guy who, whenever he left the Sixers, people were questioning whether or not Al Horford was done in the league.
Yep.
And so whenever you get this ability to rehab your image with the Thunder, now obviously they're not in that mode anymore. But
that's not part of their market anymore.
They're locking up their whole roster.
Yeah.
And, they made the move with Dylan Jones, where a guy they traded, I think, 5 second-round picks to get.
Yeah, because they had 45 second-round picks.
And then
so if you're trading 1/7 of your haul, who cares?
Yeah, then they attached a second-round pick to Dylan Jones to send him to Washington to get a guy that they waived so they could create a roster spot, presumably, for Thomas Sorber.
Yeah.
So,
And
Oklahoma,
meanwhile, they got decent minutes from Dylan Jones last season. Like
yeah, they got decent minutes. He got a
yeah,
championship,
yeah,
and now he gets a chance to show what he can do in Washington, a place
yeah.
where he can find a role.
Although Jesus Christ, like what that like Washington has four old guys and everybody else needs to be carded to go buy alcohol. Like they've got like 9 players underneath like the age of like 23 that all want to get them
Yep.
up. Like it
Yep.
is going to be that is going to be a wild circumstance to watch this coming season, just in terms of their brand of basketball. We don't really have to go into like Wizards corner or anything, but
Hey
that's
man,
they're
that's another organization where I'm like they're kind of following that Oklahoma City method. They've got a bunch of guys that they're veteran heavy, and these guys need to kind of rehab their stock. Now, obviously, playing in Washington hasn't been a great place to raise your profile in the
yeah.
last couple years, but this is an organization that's they're gaining assets. They're rehabbing they have these veteran guys who are going to mentor their young guys, and they seem like they have a plan and a direction in place, which is more than I can say for what Washington's been in the last several years. So
Yeah, and in fairness to Washington, look, hey, they rehabbed Jordan Poole's career a little bit in terms of his perception,
he had a
and were
good
able
year.
to,
I mean, like by
yeah,
the numbers, he had
yeah,
a good year.
they had a good year. They were able to move from him in a way that made a lot of sense for them, you know. So I think it worked out for both player
I
and
think
organization.
CJ McCollum's still going to have some suitors, even
Yeah,
at his price
and
tag.
worst case scenario, he gives you all that financial flexibility we talked about in
Yeah,
the
and they're
last one.
both
That
and him, McCollum and Middleton are both on expiring contracts.
yeah,
So
and
two
Marcus
guys
Smart.
yeah, two guys, yeah, and Marcus Smart, another guy
Yeah,
that's they're hoping they can get back, and he can still be he's taking a large toll on
and
his
Kelly
body.
Olynyk, all those
Yeah,
guys.
and Kelly Olynyk, a guy like Kelly Olynyk will always have value in the league because of his smarts. That is a
Yes,
guy, he's not the same athlete he was when he was in Boston, but
I
he
I
still,
mean, he was never really that much of an athlete to start
I
with,
you know
but
what I mean, like the peak of his athleticism. He's
yes,
obviously
yeah.
downside of that. But yeah, his intelligence will keep him on the floor.
But the peak of his athleticism, to use the screen again, was somewhere down
Yeah,
there,
true,
and now
true.
it's like down here. But he is, more importantly, he's like the savvy veteran that teams always kind of like to keep around. I mean, Kelly Olynyk could play in the league till he's probably in his late 30s if he wants to, because he can shoot the ball. He plays
Yep.
a smart brand of basketball. He doesn't take away. He's a guy that just comes in and does it, like much like Daniel Tice. You know, obviously very
Yeah.
different players, although kind of stretch bigs who are white guys. But
I mean, how
European
many
descent.
places, how many contenders did Daniel Tice go to? He was on
Well,
the Clippers. He was
yeah,
bounced. I think he was in Oklahoma City for a short stint. He's been on teams where they were like, "Oh, hey, this guy's got value. We still
yeah,
need
yeah. We
this."
keep seeing him come back
Yeah, he
around
keeps
for
popping
these
up.
very reasons. Yeah,
Yeah, Nick Batum does the same stuff. I mean, there's these older
yeah,
veterans. You're like, how does he keep getting re-signed? They're like, he's well liked within the organization, and they like his skill set.
yeah.
I guess the one other thing that we should talk about before we get to the kind of close of the show, Masai Ujiri. We should
Yes.
probably bring up the fact that Masai Ujiri is out as the president of basketball operations in Toronto, even though they kept him around to make draft picks and then fired him. What?
The circumstance. So apparently, I read a really good article by Eric Corrine of The Athletic yesterday was Saturday, yesterday, that was talking about the circumstances that led to this. Apparently, Masai knew he was out 2 months ago. Masai was in really good standing with one of the part owners whose name I can't remember, but a gentleman by the name of Ed Presley, who has now come to the forefront of running the organization, I think because he has the largest share of ownership, but I may get some of the particulars messed up. And Masai did not get along, right? And so Presley decided Masai was going to get out. Masai politic to be able to go through the draft process. And to me, this is another, like, this is such a dereliction of duty from the Raptors standpoint. And it's not by no fault of Masai, but like, Colin Murray Boyles get picked, and it is the most Masai pick that you could have fashioned from any player that was on this draft board. He's an idiosyncratic player. He's got weird physical skills in terms of he's very long,
He's a
he's wide,
tweener. He's like a
yeah,
tweener in the position.
yeah, he's wide. He can't shoot. it's just like a Messiah pick. But why, if you're the Raptors and you're so frustrated with this guy, are you then going to let him kind of shoehorn more of this in? So now, like Jonathan Mogbo, Scotty Barnes, Colin Murray Boyles, Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, these are all guys that have to see the floor together,
Yeah.
and all of them are minus shooters. Like, what are you doing?
Well, and then I also heard that there were people within the organization that were thrilled about Maluak being there for Toronto to draft at 10, at 9, and instead they make that pick and they let him fall to 10 to the Suns.
So I had heard, and this is actually a little bit of inside baseball, and I'm not going to say what the source was, but I had heard kind of through channels that the Raptors had some concerns about Malawach's visa status and the current administration
Oh,
because
because
they
of
repealed all the South Sudanese visas. And I think the Raptors organization decided they didn't want to add that level of headache to them. Now, to what
okay,
percentage that
that's
uh,
interesting actually.
who knows what percentage that came into play. I'm not trying to give you guys like some big breaking story or anything like that. It was just part of
It was
the
it was it was a consideration.
it was a consideration, and I think obviously a very fair one considering the complete instability with everything that's happening with our current administration and how it seeps into everything. And so
Yeah.
I agree with you. Malawat should have been the pick there. I think he was the most sensible pick there for them in a lot of ways. But if that is part of it, then I also cannot fault them for that because they are stuck as an organization that functions outside of our country, and they're the only one.
Yeah. Um, before we end this free agency roundup, I just want to pour one out for Vasily Micic. So he takes his time in coming over to the NBA. He finally gets his draft rights picked up by Oklahoma City, who brings him over, signs him to a contract, and then they trade him for Gordon Hayward. So he ends up in Charlotte. Then he gets traded with Nick Richards over to Phoenix. And then in this Mark Williams trade, he got sent back to Charlotte. And in that time, Oklahoma City, the team that originally brought him over, wins an NBA championship. Poor Vasily Micic. He's back on the Hornets. Good God.
Yes, I will
I just didn't know if anybody knew that he was even part of the Mark Williams trade.
I will also say because you got to see him front and center. Um,
He's
the guy, the
gifted
guy.
passer.
What's that?
He's a really gifted passer.
He is, but also the lack of athleticism and the inability to knock down shots has proven to be too problematic for him to be a regular player
Yeah.
on the floor. And for whatever he made, I don't remember what league he left from. But
He was in EuroLeague. I thought he was a EuroLeague MVP.
okay. 3 years, $224 million by the end of this season. Probably won't get another contract at age 32 as a guy that's not really much of a desired player at this point. I feel okay for him.
Yeah, I guess he's all right.
Yeah, he did. He did what he should have done. He established a really impressive European resume that gets to be what he's remembered as a basketball player, and then he got them checks.
Yep.
Like, I salute you, sir.
That's about as good as it can be. But yeah,
yeah.
just watching a team win an NBA championship while you get strung out
Yes.
on Hornets and the Suns it's a bit rough.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and just the organizational experience of going from the Thunder to the Hornets.
well,
and the Suns.
originally he refused to come over when his rights were owned by the 76ers, who traded his rights to Oklahoma City, I believe, in the Al Horford trade.
Yeah, that sounds.
So they had the rights to him, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll make the move. And then when he made the move, Oklahoma City gave him half a season before they packaged him up and sent him to Charlotte for Gordon Hayward with Trey Mann. So,
which was about the only, in theory, it's the only bad deal that we've really seen Presti do, except for he kind of got rid of Micic and Hayward completely was a non-factor and then was gone.
Yeah, but they only paid him for like half a season.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's kind of like in air quotes. Although, like,
and then he retired.
Yeah, you want to talk about pour one out for somebody, man. Gordon Hayward's career.
I thought he was going to end up as like a backup on the Nuggets or something, but he just after that injury, man, was never really the same. And then, you go. Well, see, I thought it was the same thing with Batum. I was like, oh, Batum went to Charlotte. That's where his career died. The second he got out of there and went back to the Clippers, it was like, oh yeah, Nicholas Batum, still a good like rotational guy.
Well, what became weird about Hayward And what is the key distinction with these two guys is he got scared to shoot.
He refused to shoot.
He's
That
stuck.
was
He's
the problem. Yeah.
and Nicola Batum is the exact opposite. Like
But
that
Batum has
dude,
never seen a shot he didn't
yeah,
like.
he gets him up and he gets him up in the hurry, right? Like, but
Right.
hey, if Hayward's not, first of all, if you're not making shots, it's problematic enough. If you're not a shot threat once you've lost all your athleticism, what are you on the floor for?
He wasn't even looking at the basket. Like he
No, no. I
wouldn't
mean,
even
like
look to shoot.
that's
He didn't
that
even
second
like
half of the
up
season
fake,
with the
no one
Thunder was
ball.
weird. He was
Yeah.
Ben Simmonsing the hell out of his time on the floor.
Yeah. I really thought eventually he was going to turn the corner, being in a better organization, better fit with the roster. Never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is our free agent roundup. If we even broke a little bit of news during the middle of this one. Aaron, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we call it an episode?
For those that didn't read, I teased it before. I finally kicked off the dust and
I did read that.
spent an absurd amount of time on the draft. So if anybody's out there and haven't gotten their draft synopsis, I kind of what I like to do is have it feel kind of like actually one of the people on threads, and I'm just going to blank out on the handle right now, made the point, but it was like kind of a Cliff's Notes of the players. And that's what I want to do. I want to hopefully make it be something that's kind of easily digestible for what the
Absolutely.
best version of my concerns and then the fit. And so I did that as a supplement to that on Tuesday with some of my fellow basketball intelligence network stars. Nick Agar Johnson, who's with No Ceilings. And if you don't follow No Ceiling stuff, they're about as good as it gets with the high school and college level guys and just draft prep and all that. They have an entire ecosystem that's really awesome of resources and things. So check them out. And then Ray LeBove, who's both my business partner and co-host on the Basketball Intelligence, the Unrestricted Area. We're going to do an entire kind of draft episode that should be up Wednesday morning that I'm looking forward to getting into to kind of like get the last sort of thoughts out on this draft. And being with those guys will help me kind of continue to evolve my feelings about these players before we get into Summer League. And I'll be at Summer League hopefully from day one. I won't be there all the days because then I'm going to coach at a basketball camp. So a lot of basketball stuff coming down the line.
Yeah, basketball doesn't stop for you, buddy.
No,
Well,
sir.
congratulations. I did read your draft review, and not preview, but review, and I thought it was great. I love reading your words. I can actually read it in your voice, which is actually really fun. It's a fun thing about recording with you and doing this podcast. And yeah, man, really, really proud of the work. You did a good job, and I learned a lot more about these guys. And I need to start doing some more draft prep, and I'm going to try that next year. It's just when Oklahoma City was in the finals all the way up until Sunday, I wasn't thinking about anything other than the finals, and I could have been doing some draft stuff. So I'll try again next year, but it's entirely possible that Oklahoma City's in the finals again, and I might just be relying on you a second time around.
Well, one of the things that is my goal going forward is because I'm seeing these guys a lot more often, just being here and seeing them at the high school level and hopefully getting back out on the road for some college stuff. I'm going to start creating my own assessments and rankings of this coming draft. Probably after we get off this, I'm going to start getting into stuff a little bit. And I've already been able to see AJ Dybonsta and Darren Peterson and some of the guys that are going to be at the top of this group. But as we record and go on and as the season for next year starts to get going, I would love for us to just kind of every once in a while just tap in and maybe have just some
Yeah,
superficial
player to watch
conversations.
kind of thing.
Yeah, who have I seen? What's happening? It doesn't, we can do it on the very back end, but just as like a little check-in or just kind of a general like temperature gauge of some of that stuff. Cause I want to, this year, I was happy with what I did, but I felt like I had to do too much of the work on the back end, and I prefer to be able to have it just be a constant evolutionary thing. Not that we talked on the last episode, I was keeping up with the draft and stuff, including interviews and podcasts and all that stuff. But I want to be even more steeped into it because I enjoy the process, and I think that there are certain elements of it that I see that it could be hopefully of benefit to people that are interested. So,
Well, something for you guys to look forward to. Well, we appreciate you guys again. As always, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Please check us out on YouTube, and we will end this podcast the way that we always do by saying adios.